Hello, hello, high-level listeners. Welcome to our latest phrasal verb video all about work. English speakers love using phrasal verbs in all aspects of their daily lives, from using them at home to even using them at work, like these ones. Do you like to take on new responsibilities at work? Do you have to run everything by your boss before you finish? Or are you sometimes too nervous to speak up during meetings in English? If you aren't familiar with some of these phrasal verbs, don't worry, we're here to help. We're here with another episode of our phrasal verb series where we share a list of phrasal verbs around a single topic to help you understand more real life English vocabulary and to help you speak fluently and confidently at the same time.
Yes, that's right. And like Kat said, today's topic is all about work. So we're here to share 10 commonly spoken English phrasal verbs that are used in English-speaking workplaces. Like always, in these videos, we'll explain each phrasal verb very simply by giving you a clear definition, and then we'll give you 4 example sentences of each one to help you understand how it's commonly used and sometimes in various grammar tenses as well.
Now, we don't want to make it too confusing, so we are focusing on work today. There are lots of phrasal verbs that have multiple meanings in English, but again, we want to just give you one topic where you can feel confident using these at work. So let's get started. Our first one is to take on or to take something on. To take on something or to take something off is to accept something as your work or your responsibility. Okay, so if you take something on, you might start a new project, you might get ready to work on something together with someone else, and you are taking it on. So here's a couple of example sentences. I'm happy to take on the extra project if no one has time. I'm happy to take on the extra project if no one else has time. So we could say, take the extra project on, take it on, or we can say, take on the extra project. We're looking for someone to take on the role of team leader. We're looking for someone to take on the role of team leader. Take on the role. Take the role on. Take it on.
Yes, as Kat said, if you take on a responsibility, now it's your responsibility. Your boss is looking at you. Everyone is depending on you. You took it on. It's your job now. You have to finish it. So another example sentence could be, don't take on more work than you can handle. Don't take on more work than you can handle. One more example. The company is taking on new staff to deal with the increased workload. In this sentence, the company is taking on new staff means the company is hiring new staff. They are accepting applications and accepting more workers. So the company is taking on new staff to deal with the increased workload. Phrasal verb number 2 is look into. Look into something. Always these words stay together. You look into something when you try to find out more about something. Maybe there's a problem and you need to find the answer. You need to look into the problem. Or maybe there's some confusion. You need to look into the database and find out where people are confused. Maybe your superiors want you to research something to help develop a strategy or what to do next. So you might look into some market trends or look into your competitors and find out what they're doing. So you're trying to find out more. For example, we need to look into the cause of the delay. We need to look into the cause of the delay. I'm looking into different options for our new marketing campaign. I'm looking into for our new marketing campaign.
Just like Mark said, we are trying to find out something. We're trying to learn something new. And this would be a good replacement for the word research as well. So I'll look into the problem and get back to you as soon as possible. I'll kind of research the problem or figure out more information about it. I'll look into the problem and get back to you as soon as possible. If you are going to get back to someone, that means you will reply or respond back to them. So they asked you something, you'll get back to them as soon as you've looked into it. Can you look into the possibility of arranging a meeting next week? Now, this is a very polite way to say, let's have a meeting next week. But I'm kind of putting it into, your world. I'm kind of trying to ask you about your schedule. So, can you look into the possibility of arranging a meeting next week? Can you look into the possibility of arranging a meeting next week? The next one that we have here is come up with something. Come up with an idea. This is when you think of or you create a solution for something. You create an idea. You come up with something. This would be good for a brainstorming session where you need to come up with lots of ideas. Now, I really like the word brainstorm, but it is just very common for English speakers to just choose 3 simple words, come up with something, rather than always use a brand new word like brainstorm or create. So we need to come up with a solution to this problem quickly. We need to come up with a solution to this problem quickly. We need to think about something and offer some new ideas, right? Let's come up with a solution. Wow, she's always coming up with great ideas. She's always coming up with great ideas.
Yes, it's one of those rare phrasal verbs that has 3 parts, and the 3 parts always stay together. Come up with. We can't separate this one, even in a question form. Can you come up with a better slogan for the product? Can you come up with a better slogan for the product? In the past tense, the team came up with a creative way to present the data. The team came up with a creative way to present the data. Okay, the 4th phrasal verb is run by, or run something by. Often, after this phrasal verb, we talk about a person. I go, run it by my boss, run it by you, run it by the client. And that's when I want to get their idea, or I want to get their opinion about it. I'm going to run this by my boss and see if he likes it or he doesn't like it. Or can I run this by you and can you tell me what you think? Maybe I have an idea and I want to know what you think and you can give me your feedback. Before I send it to my boss, before I send it to my client, can I run it by you first just so I can get some safe feedback before I get into trouble or make a big mistake? This is useful if your work has some quite big consequences for mistakes and you really don't want to cause any problems. Run it by someone. For example, let me run the proposal by the team and see what they think. So let me run the proposal by the team and see what they think. So I'm going to show it to the team and they're going to give me their feedback. I'll run the numbers by the finance department to make sure everything is correct. Again, run by can also be a way of checking for mistakes before you finalize something. So I'll run the numbers by the finance department to make sure everything is correct.
An interesting tip about this one is we always say run it by the person, okay? We will never say run by something. Run something by the other person. So run the project by, run this by, run it by. We're always going to separate it and put it in the middle. If you said something like, I'm going to run by the proposal, it sounds like you're physically running beside it or running away from it, right? So I'm running by the office today would mean I'm physically running next to the office today. So as long as we keep it separated, you won't have any issues with understanding. Because like we said, we do use phrasal verbs all the time. And sometimes we just put prepositions next to the verb. And that can just mean physically doing that item as well. So it does get a little confusing, but don't worry, just keep them separate. So can I run this idea by you before the meeting? Can I run this idea before? Can I run this idea by you before the meeting? So I want your opinion on it. I want your approval on it. I want you to tell me that this is good. Can you look it over? can I run it by you? I'd like to run my presentation by you to get your feedback. Feedback would be your advice or any corrections you might have, or even just your opinion. I'd like to run my presentation by you to get your feedback. Our next phrasal verb, to point something out, okay? Now, we can point something out physically with our fingers, but if we use it in the sense of speaking, we want to show or tell someone something important, okay? I'd like to make a note of something. I'd like to point something out. I'd like to show you. I'd like to tell you something important. So I'd like to point out that we're running behind schedule. So let's pick it up a bit. We've got two different phrasal verbs in this one. I'd like to point out, just letting everyone know this is important. I'd like to point out that we're running behind. Oh, we've got lots of phrasal verbs in this one. Running behind. So we're a little late. We're running a little late. We love the word running, especially in the American office. We're running behind, so we're running a little late. I'd like to point out that we're running behind schedule, so let's pick it up a bit. Pick it up is to go a little faster. How many times have I heard my boss say, okay, guys, let's pick it up a little bit. We're a bit behind schedule, so let's pick it up. Let's pick it up. From my sports coach to my boss, everyone wants to go faster, so let's pick it up. He pointed out a few errors in the report. Now, he might physically with his finger point them out to me, or he might just tell me, okay, there's an error here, there's an error here, and there's an error here. So he made a few points. He pointed out a few errors in the report.
Yes, as you might be able to tell from Kat's examples, when you point something out, you feel that this is important information. It can be something urgent, it can be something serious, or it can be a mistake. You don't want mistakes in your work. If you see a mistake, you should point it out. Even if it might make the other person a bit annoyed or it might slow things down, it's important. You need to point it out. Some more examples. She pointed out the potential risks involved in the project. So again, risks are problems, so you should point them out. She pointed out the potential risks involved in the project. You can also use point out just to be helpful and highlight important things. Can you point out the main features of the new software? Can you point out the main features of the new software? Okay, next phrasal verb, speak up. Speak up. These always stay together. Speak up is to say what you think clearly, kind of loudly and confidently. I understand if you speak English in an office and English is not your first language, you might feel a bit nervous in meetings, and when you have to talk, your voice might be quite quiet because you're thinking about grammar and vocabulary, but it's important to speak up and say what you think clearly. However, this phrasal verb is not only for non-native speakers, it's also about your confidence. Even native English speakers, if I'm in a meeting and I don't say what I think, and I don't tell people how I feel, I'm not speaking up. It's important for a team to work together well that everyone speaks up and everyone shares their thoughts and shares their opinions. I need to know what you think. If you think something is terrible, you should still tell me. You should speak up. So it isn't just confidence in your language, it's like confidence in yourself to share what you think. So, for example, he spoke up in the meeting and suggested a new approach. He spoke up in the meeting and suggested a new approach. So he shared his opinion. She finally spoke up and told her boss about the problem. She finally spoke up and told her boss about the problem. So yes, talking to your boss, you might feel a little bit afraid of your boss. You don't want to make them mad. But if you speak up and tell them what you think, you're being completely honest with them. So she finally spoke up, like she finally got the confidence to share her opinion.
I also think the opposite of speaking up would be to keep quiet, right? So Some people don't want you to stay quiet or to keep quiet. They want you to speak up. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to speak up. All right? Don't stay quiet. Speak up, please. So it can be volume. We might be talking a little bit like this, and we need to, could you speak up, please? Oh, yeah, I think we need to. So it can be about volume. And like Mark said, it can also be about not staying quiet, being louder, or simply saying what you want to say. Don't be afraid to speak up if you disagree with something. Don't be afraid to speak up. Don't keep quiet, right? Don't be afraid to speak up if you disagree with something. All right, so our next phrase is to go over something. This is another one of those phrasal verbs that we're going to keep together. We never say go it over. We would say go over it. Go over it. So they're going to stick together, these two words. Let's go over the agenda for the meeting. So to go over something is to check it or review it, or you might refresh your mind a little bit about something, get a reminder. So let's go over the agenda for the meeting. Let's go over the agenda for the meeting. So let's see, we are going to start the meeting, and then we're going to talk about the business, then we'll have the presentation, and we can go over the agenda for the meeting. Can we go over the details of the contract again? It is very common to use this when we are going to review or look over something again. So look over and go over are quite similar. Can we go over the details of the contract again? So this is a review. We're doing something again.
Some more examples. I'd like to go over the presentation one more time before we present it to the client. So again, we're looking for any mistakes, any problems. We're going to polish it and perfect it by going over it. So I'd like to go over the presentation one more time before we present it to the client. We need to go over the budget to make sure we're on track. So to go over the budget, we're going to check all the numbers, all the maths, and all the statistics and make sure everything is correct. We need to go over the budget to make sure we're on track. Okay, the next phrasal verb, there's two variations, hand over or hand in. So if you hand in something, you give your work to someone else. Usually when you hand it in, you're giving it to someone higher than you. So I'm handing it into my manager, handing it into my boss, handing it into my supervisor. I'm finished. I've done what I'm supposed to do. Now I need to show you what I've done. I think it's ready, or I think you need to look at it to take the work further. So I'll hand it in to you. If you're at university or if you learn this at school, you also do this. When a student finishes their essay, they hand it in to the teacher. So the teacher checks it. And the same in an office. If you hand in your work or hand over your work, your boss checks it again and makes sure it's all right. Can you hand in that file by the end of the week? That would be your boss or supervisor asking you to finish and give them work. Give them your finished work. Can you hand in that file by the end of the week? He handed in his resignation yesterday. So handed in is the past tense. His resignation means he quit. He doesn't want to work anymore. So you can do that too. You can hand in your work, and when you want to stop, hand in your resignation. Use the same phrasal verb.
So we've got hand in, and then I kind of like the other word hand it over, because I really feel like you're giving all of your work and passing it on to someone else. So I could hand in a report. Okay, here's my finished report. I'm handing it in. My boss will look at it and will, it's done. It's finished. But if I hand over a project to someone else, I feel like that project is no longer my responsibility. I'm going to hand it all over. Okay, so you get everything. This is not on me anymore, right? So
it's your problem now.
Exactly. Your problem now. I'm handing it all over. I'm handing it over to you. So you might hear someone when they're speaking on a microphone and say, okay, well, I'm going to hand it over to the CEO. That means I'm finished talking and it's your turn now, right? I'm done. So please hand in your reports by the end of the week. Please hand in your reports by the end of the week. Now, hand in and hand over both mean give, but if I said, please hand over your reports by the end of the week, then I would think that at the end of the week, I'm handing it over and I'm not going to work on it anymore, right? So hand in your reports. Maybe these are your weekly, daily reports, or hand it over. That means, give it all away, give it all to the person. I'm handing this, oops, 1 second. I'm handing over this project to my colleague. I'm handing over this project to my colleague. Not just the project, but my responsibility is finished now, okay? This is no longer my work. I handed it over to my colleague. I'm handing over this project to my colleague. All right, we've got another one with 3 parts of our phrasal verb. To sign off on something. To sign off on something. When your boss has checked what you've handed in, all right, they've looked it over, they've gone over a few reports, a few errors, they've fixed everything. Now your boss is going to basically sign it or say, it's ready. I'm going to sign off on this. I'm going to give you approval. I'm going to give you permission as well to sign off on something. The manager needs to sign off on the project before we can start. So the manager needs to approve this. They need to look over it, make sure that's the job we need to do, and then they will sign off on the project. The manager needs to sign off on the project before we can start. I'll sign off on the invoice once I've checked it. Okay, so I'm going to look it over. I've gone over everything. Looks good. All right. Yes, it's official. I'll sign off on the invoice.
Some more examples. Can you sign off on this document, please? Again, I need your permission or your approval before I can finish my work. So maybe you have to check some documents in another department or with another colleague. Maybe they've got some expertise or some knowledge on something and only they can tell whether it's right or wrong. So can you sign off on this document, please? This could be literally like a stamp. It could be a literal signature or just their verbal approval. Sign off on this document. And one more example. She finally signed off on the budget after making a few changes. She finally signed off on the budget after making a few changes. Okay, last phrasal verb is to turn down. You probably know turn down the radio or turn down the volume, but it also means to say, no, I don't want to do that. If you're at work and your boss suggests a project or your client suggests an idea, if you don't like the idea, you don't have the expertise, the time, the knowledge, then I have to turn it down. Turn the offer down, turn the project down, turn my appeal down. Yeah, when you say no to something, when you reject it. Reject and no are quite serious, harsh words. They're quite direct. And in business, we try to be a little bit softer and therefore more polite. So phrasal verbs are useful for softening language, and turn down is a softer way to say no or rejecting an idea. You might hear, we turned down their proposal because it was too expensive. We turned down their proposal because it was too expensive. He turned down the opportunity to work abroad. He turned down the opportunity to work abroad. Again, when you're replying to an offer, even if it's a generous offer, don't say no. Say, I'm sorry, I have to turn it down. It's much softer and more polite.
I absolutely agree with Mark. This is going to be so much more polite than, oh, they said no. They turned it down. They turned it down. I said no. I turned it down. If someone rejects you, you can also say, I was turned down. Okay, so way nicer, way softer, especially if you're writing an email, less abrupt. I had to turn down the job offer because it wasn't the right fit for me. I had to turn down the job offer because it wasn't the right fit for me. So we could say turn down the job offer or turn the job offer down. This is okay to split these two words up. She turned down the invitation for the concert. She turned down the invitation to the conference. So she had to RSVP no. She turned down the invitation to the conference. All right, so there you have it. Another amazing list of useful phrasal verbs and phrases that you can use when you're working or you're at work in an English-speaking company. So which one was your favorite phrase from the video today? Were any phrasal verbs new ones for you? Let us know in the comments below. We read and reply to each one, so get in touch.
Yes, we really do. If you really like the video today, you can click like and subscribe as well. We post at least 2 videos every week. And don't forget, you can also get a PDF transcript of this episode and all of our other episodes as well if you become a High Level Listening member. There's a link on how to do that below. You can join, download these PDFs, take them offline, and study them however you like.
Thanks so much, everyone. We really appreciate it. See you next time for our next English video here on High Level Listening.